Okay, so I feel like I talk about this widower thing a lot in my life. The widower that I'm now divorced from. Okay, that and people I'm like, oh, I talk about it all the time, but some people talk about Vietnam all the time. You know, we all have our thing. So that's my thing, I guess, right now. When I was about midway in our relationship, there was a point where Jeff would tell me the story about when his wife died, the final moment. Not a lot, but usually like at my birthday or something. I'm just kidding, no. And he would tell it. He'd tell it at certain moments, and it was always, of course, an incredibly heart-stopping, it was an intense story. And he would start, and he would never tell me all the details. But he would also say, "Man, hospice people, the people who do hospice, those are the angels amongst us. Like they are the most amazing people." And I'd be like, "How do you mean?" He's like, "It's really hard to explain unless they're amazing people." So I decided that I was going to. I didn't do it right away. I didn't like walk out of the room and come back like I got a hospice job. Like I tried to be more subtle about it. And as I don't know, like maybe 6 months later or something, but I started looking into doing a hospice thing. And I first looked into volunteering, and then there was a paid position, and it wasn't a ton, but you were like a hospice helper, and you weren't a nurse, but you were going in with it was basically like I was almost anyway. So I'm going to be a hospice helper, and so I go do it, and I tell him like, no, I've always wanted to do hospice stuff because of my nurturing vibe and stuff, and I also think, wow, like it'll be some way that now they've always been so private about her death and what it was like when his wife died and everything, and of course that was always their story. And I thought maybe if I started doing hospice stuff too, they'd also bring me, I could be like, oh, did she have the rattle? Or I know it's so dark, but I could be like, I know the rattle, and so. That's what you get. I know it's so disturbing, but I go and I get a job at the Rose Room Hospice Center in LA, and you have to do training. And the training was just a week of I had an anxiety attack for an entire week because everything about it, because you're talking about there was death. There was a lot of death stuff, and it was a lot of talking about sort of one of my favorite things was actually there, like when somebody you're with somebody who's dying, whatever they say, you just agree with it. You're not supposed to go like if someone goes, "There's a door there," you're not like, no, there's not. Like, which I thought was like kind of a duh. Like you'd be like, "There's no door there." You're not really okay, whatever. There's a door. But there was all this. And I learned about listening. I did. Besides the anxiety attacks, they kept talking about how your body dies and everything, and everyone else is like taking notes, and I'm like, I feel like I'm falling through the earth. I can't take this, but I'm still trying to like interesting what happens in the end. And so, but one of the things I learned is about listening, because they were like, and the woman who's running it goes, "You know what a good listener is?" And I was like, "I do. I'm a great listener." And she was like, if somebody says to you, "Oh, my mother grew up in Omaha, Nebraska," what do you say? And I go, "Oh, Nebraska." I take it like a story prompt. I'm like, "Nebraska. I have a story about Nebraska. One time I was in Nebraska." And she was like, "Wrong. That's not what you do. And when someone's dying, we like to honor their stories first." And I was like, "Oh, this job sucks." I was like, I have to honor their stories. But I thought that was also very profound to me, like learning how to do that. I was like, oh, that's right. You just listen to somebody. And she goes, they don't want to hear about you right now. They're not like, tell me more about your childhood, because they may want to be getting stuff out in their final moments. And so, which was a very good lesson for me too. So I get my first woman, my first assignment, and her name was Lucy. And Lucy was, anyway, this older lady, very old, and she was dying, hence the job. Okay, and so, and I go in, and Lucy didn't talk much. She was just sort of, but they told me to do, they gave you activities, like you can play solitaire with them, or you can maybe ask what kind of like magazines they like. And so, and they said, or you can paint their nails. And I was like, I'm going to do that, and I'm gonna paint Lucy's nails. And so the first day I was there, her husband is going to go play golf, and I'm going to sit with Lucy while his husband goes. And her husband had just bought her this white, like sort of cashmere, just beautiful, super soft white blanket that was all over. Well, not like all get spilled on. Anyway, it was on her lap, and so I'm doing her nails, and she asked me about my family. So it was she said, she was like, she said, "Where are you from?" And I was like, oh, am I supposed to answer that? And I was like, are you going to turn me in if I start to talk? Like, this is a setup. And I go, I'm from, and I ended up telling her, I'm like, I'm adopted, and I'm doing her nails, and I'm just like, I'm adopted, and I met them when I was 20, and then I'm going, and she was listening. I think she enjoyed it, and she said, because at one point she was like, "Are you bitter?" And I was like, "Oh, she's with me, and So I get done doing her nails, and she looks down, and she was like, yeah, and then she goes like this on the blanket and wipes her nails all over the white blanket, and it's red polish, and it smears and I didn't bring removers, so it's like bread all over her thing, and I was like, Lucy, like. I was like, good, and I'm trying to put the blanket over and get it, and it was horrible. It was anyway. So then she was my first person, and then the second person I had was a woman she'd been a 50s a big band singer, and that's for you deaf people. and she sang. She was famous for singing "I'm a Little Teapot." That was her cut. And she was known for that. And she'd been in 50s Chicago big bands. It was kind of amazing. And then they said that sometimes if people are like, you can bring in old, they like to look at pictures from their past or whatever. You can ask them if they want to do that. Well, I found a recording of this woman's actual, like, I'm a Little Teapot, short and stout, and the whole big band thing. And it had her even talking in it, like doing the interview. She said, well, I've been on the road now for the, it's very fit. Anyway. And I start to play, I bring it in to play it for her. And as soon as it starts, oh my God, it was super. She starts looking around like it's there, and then she starts sobbing, and she looks so confused and so just like, what's happening? And then I was like, oh God, like this, let me paint your nails or something. Like, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize the intensity, and I didn't know how to handle that, and it was so intense. Anyway, and so that, and then she told me that I didn't have to come every day. She was. And she did, because I go, I'll come back tomorrow, I promise. And she's like, that's okay. And I had this idea that I was going to keep getting better and better at the hospice thing, and I was going to sort of open my heart and be with people. And then what happened is this is horrible. The smell started to bother me, and I to the point where I felt guilty. I didn't want to tell anybody the smell started bothering me. But then it ended up that I was pregnant, and that's how I found out I was pregnant. Is that I would walk in and be like, I don't think I can be here. It's not you, it's me. I swear to God, it's not you, it's me. And so I used and then I which thank God, because at first I was like, I can't tell him, I can't handle that. So then I ended up quitting because I had new life inside of me. So that's so cheap, isn't it? That's a cheap penny. It's good. That's all.